Welcome to Trending Update USA. I am Stefan, and today we're asking a bigger question than just who won or lost. What really happens when two of the most talked about young stars in tennis collide under pressure, expectation, and constant global attention? Because when Coco Gauff faces Emma Raducanu, it's never just about tennis. It becomes a story about pressure, identity, hype, resilience, and the unpredictable human side of elite sport. Let's start with what happened. This matchup carried a level of anticipation that goes far beyond rankings or recent form. On one side, Coco Gauff, already a Grand Slam champion, already carrying the weight of being labeled the future of American tennis for years. On the other side, Emma Raducanu, a player who shocked the world with her historic US Open win, but has since lived under a microscope that rarely turns off. The match itself had everything people expected, and a few things they didn't. There were moments of brilliance, clean winners, smart tactical adjustments, and flashes of why both players were once seen as unstoppable rising forces. But there were also dips. Missed opportunities. Sudden shifts in momentum that didn't always make sense from a purely technical perspective. And that's where the real story begins. Because this wasn't just a match about forehands and backhands. This was a match shaped by pressure, the kind you don't see on a stat sheet. Let's talk about Coco Gauff first. Gauff has grown into a player who understands expectations better than most. From the age of 15, she was already being discussed as a future world number one. That kind of early spotlight can break players, but in her case, it seems to have built a kind of mental armor. However, even with that experience, matches like this still test her in different ways. Why? Because facing someone like Emma Raducanu isn't just about strategy. It's about narrative. It's about being compared, analyzed, and judged in real time, not just by coaches or commentators, but by millions of fans online. Every point becomes a statement. Every mistake becomes a headline. And Gauff, despite her maturity, still has to navigate that environment while trying to execute under pressure. Now let's shift to Emma Raducanu. Raducanu's story is, in many ways, even more complicated. Winning a Grand Slam at such a young age, and doing it in such a historic way, didn't just elevate her career. It transformed her life overnight. She went from being a promising player to a global figure, with endorsements, media appearances, and expectations that skyrocketed instantly. But here's the problem with sudden success: it doesn't come with a manual. Raducanu has spent the years since that US Open victory trying to find stability in her coaching team, her physical condition, and perhaps most importantly, her identity as a player. So when she steps onto the court against someone like Gauff, she's not just playing an opponent. She's also playing against the version of herself that the world expects her to be. And that creates a unique kind of pressure. What we saw in this match were moments where Raducanu looked confident, composed, and capable of dictating play. But we also saw moments where hesitation crept in, where the weight of expectation seemed to slow her down just enough to make a difference. That contrast is important, because it reminds us that elite athletes are not machines. They are constantly balancing performance with perception. Now let's go deeper into the idea of pressure, because this match is a perfect case study. In modern tennis, pressure doesn't just come from the scoreboard. It comes from everywhere. It comes from social media, where every match is dissected within seconds. It comes from headlines that frame players as either back or finished based on a single performance. It comes from fans who expect consistency in a sport that is inherently unpredictable. For Gauff, pressure often comes in the form of expectation, the belief that she should win, that she should dominate, that she should continue progressing without setbacks. For Raducanu, pressure often comes in the form of doubt, questions about whether she can return to her peak, whether she can stay healthy, whether she can meet the expectations set by her early success. And when these two types of pressure collide on the same court, you get a match that feels emotionally charged, even when the rallies themselves are relatively routine. Another layer to this story is media exposure. Both Gauff and Raducanu are not just athletes. They are brands, public figures, and symbols of a new generation in tennis. They do interviews, attend events, maintain social media presence, all while trying to train, recover, and compete at the highest level. That balancing act is not easy. In fact, it raises an important question: how much visibility is too much? Because while media exposure can build a player's profile and open opportunities, it can also create constant pressure to perform, to respond, and to maintain an image. And in a sport like tennis, where players are alone on the court, that mental load becomes even more significant. During this match, you could sense that both players were carrying more than just tactical plans. There were moments where the tension felt internal. A missed shot wasn't just a missed shot, it felt like a moment of self-doubt. A winning streak wasn't just momentum, it felt like a temporary escape from pressure. That emotional dimension is what made this match compelling, even beyond the actual result. Now let's talk about social media, because it plays a huge role in shaping how matches like this are experienced. Within minutes of the match starting, clips, reactions, and opinions begin to circulate online. Some fans celebrate brilliance. Others criticize mistakes. And many create narratives that may or may not reflect reality. For players, this creates a challenging environment. They are aware that everything they do is being watched, discussed, and often judged in real time. Even if they try to ignore it, the awareness is still there. And that awareness can influence performance in subtle ways. It can make players more cautious. It can make them second-guess decisions. Or it can push them to take risks they might not otherwise take. In the case of Gauff and Raducanu, both players have experienced the highs and lows of social media attention. Gauff has often been praised for her maturity and composure, but she has also faced criticism during difficult moments. Raducanu has been celebrated as a global star, but she has also been scrutinized for injuries, coaching changes, and performance fluctuations. This duality is part of modern sports. Visibility brings opportunity, but it also brings vulnerability. Another important aspect to consider is player privacy. In previous generations, athletes had more space to develop away from constant public scrutiny. Today, that space is much smaller. Every training session, every appearance, every match can become content. And while this increases fan engagement, it also reduces the margin for personal growth away from the spotlight. For young players like Gauff and Raducanu, this creates a unique challenge. They are not just developing as athletes, they are developing as individuals in a highly visible environment. And that development is not always linear. There will be setbacks. There will be moments of uncertainty. And there will be matches like this one, where the outcome feels secondary to the larger story. So what does this match really tell us? It tells us that talent alone is not enough. It tells us that mental strength is not a fixed trait, it's something that evolves over time. It tells us that success at a young age can be both a blessing and a burden. And perhaps most importantly, it tells us that we need to look beyond the scoreboard when evaluating players. Because the real story is often happening beneath the surface. For Coco Gauff, this match reinforces her position as a player who can navigate pressure, even when things are not perfect. For Emma Raducanu, it highlights both the challenges she faces and the potential she still holds. And for fans, it offers a chance to reflect on how we engage with sports. Do we focus only on results? Or do we also consider the human element behind those results? As we move forward, matches like this will continue to shape the narrative of women's tennis. Not just in terms of rankings or titles, but in terms of how we understand the modern athlete. Because today's players are not just competing against opponents. They are competing against expectations, narratives, and the constant presence of an audience that never truly goes away. And that makes every match more than just a game. It becomes a story about resilience, identity, and the search for balance in a world that demands both performance and perfection. In the end, Coco Gauff versus Emma Raducanu is not just about drama or unexpected moments. It's about what those moments reveal. About the pressures young athletes face. About the role of media and social platforms. And about the importance of seeing players as people, not just performers. Because when we understand that, we start to appreciate the game on a deeper level. And maybe, just maybe, we become more thoughtful fans in the process. Now, before we wrap up, here are a few questions for you. Do you think social media helps or harms young athletes like Coco Gauff and Emma Raducanu? Can early success, like Raducanu's US Open win, create more pressure than advantage in the long run? And are we, as fans, expecting too much too soon from the next generation of tennis stars? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is Stefan, and you're watching Trending Update USA. Stay informed, stay thoughtful, and I'll see you in the next one.